Rolling, rolling, rolling. Hi! We look at lorry and truck drivers vocabulary today. Thanks to listener Tony. And how do we make this podcast? What preparation is involved? And what should you do if you want to create your own podcast? Welcome to
Aprender Inglés con Reza y Craig.
Hi, I'm Reza.
And my name's Craig.
And with nearly 50 years of teaching experience between us, we're hoping to help you improve your English and take it up to the next level. How are you, Craig?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm always happy to get on the microphone and help our listeners improve their English. How are you, mate?
I'm fine. I'm keeping her rolling. Keeping her rolling.
Keeping them rolling down the highway. We're talking about truckers, long-distance lorry drivers today. But before that, Reza, we have an email from Islam Kista. Would you mind reading it for the listeners?
Not at all. Here's the email from Islam Kista. I want to ask you about something I've heard during watching Britain's Got Talent. Someone pronounced this phrase, must remain, as mush remain. But I didn't get what is the rule of it. I think he means, but I don't understand what he's trying to say.
Yeah.
Could you tell me, please? Well, I'm not sure I could. I don't know. I don't know what's happened there, Craig. Why do you think they said mush remain?
I don't think Islam heard mush remain. I think it was must remain. Must remain. And I think it was not pronouncing the T, the T, at the end of must. Because one way of saying must remain is pronouncing every single sound, must remain. But very often in English, some sounds become very, very soft, or you drop, you lose the sound. So you can say must remain. So you don't really hear the T at the end of must. For example, I must go, or you must be tired. So possibly that's what happened. And there is no rule, Islam. It's how you pronounce. So maybe in some parts of the world, people do say must remain. And in some parts, it's softer, must remain. I think that might be what Islam heard.
Yes, that sounds logical to me as well. We also have a voice message from Dominic from France.
Hi Reza, hi Craig. This is Dominic from France. I live in a small town next to Paris. A few weeks ago, I came across one of your podcasts, and now I am a hairholic. I like your sense of humor and your good mood. I hope that you'll carry on your podcast for the 50 next years. So, imagine, you will present you like that. This is Reza, this is Craig, and we have nearly 1 century of teaching English between us. What a good presentation. My question is, how do you prepare and organize your podcast? How do you choose the topics? You don't write anything when you speak because you seem very natural. How do you know who must speak at first, for example? Thank you very much for your answers. Bye bye.
Bonjour, Dominique. Comment ça va?
Oh, Craig, ooh la la. I didn't know you could speak French so well.
That's all my French in that. That's it. Sorry, Dominique, I speak no more French. Reza's French is very good.
No.
Bien sûr.
No.
Thank you very much for your message, Dominique. It was lovely. We thoroughly enjoyed listening to it. Any comments, Reza?
Dominic, thanks very much for the idea that we go on podcasting for another 50 years so that we have to say 100 years. But do you think people are going to listen to a couple of boring old podcasters.
Well, they do now.
100 years, well,
They do now.
Well, that's true, but we'll be even more boring then. But thanks very much for your motivation. It's exactly that which keeps us going. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, and for your lovely compliments. Just one small thing, and as much as we enjoyed your accent and your pronunciation, which was really, really good, and I'm sure Reza agrees, there's just one aspect of your pronunciation that might be confusing to a listener, and that's your pronunciation of choose. You said shoes. So it sounds like shoes that you wear on your feet and not choose, which is to decide on one thing and not the other. So the sound of CH in many words is ch, like a train goes ch, ch, ch. So choose, try to make that harder and throw out more air when you say it. Choose. I need to choose.
Yes, that's an interesting tiny little pronunciation error because Spanish speakers have exactly the opposite problem. Because in English, CH can be sh, like, for example, chef, a word which we've taken from French.
France. Yeah, from French.
But Spanish speakers will always say, oh, he was a really good chef, they'll say. Because in Spanish, you can't say CH as sh. So in English, we can say CH as ch, like choose, or as sh, like chef, or as k, like Christmas.
And chaos.
So it's interesting that your mistake was the opposite mistake to most of our Spanish speakers. Can I just make one little correction to what you said when you asked us about the 50 next years? Actually, we need to reverse the order of that. It's the next 50 years. So we put next before the number. The next 10 days, the next 4 hours, the next 50 years.
Your question, Dominique, was about how we prepare the podcast. So here are the steps. There are 8 or 9 steps in preparing the podcast. The first thing we do is we receive your requests and ideas for future shows and decide on the theme. For example, today is trucking and long distance lorry drivers from Tony. So then that becomes notes in Google Docs. Together, Reza and I, because we don't live together, we live in different places, we use Google Docs, which is really convenient to share notes, and we add to the notes during the week and research what we're going to speak about. But the notes are not very long, they're just bullet points, very short ideas. Then we meet, as we are today. Reza comes to my flat where I have microphones and a computer. And we record, but we don't record into a computer. We record into a digital recorder, which is kind of like a mixer. It mixes sound as well, and I can adjust the volume. Then Reza goes after lunch, and the podcast is edited, and the software I use is Audacity. If you're interested in this, you can find this information in the show notes at inglespodcast.com/283. So the podcast is edited, we add the music and any voice messages like yours that we've just heard, Dominic, and then the sound is leveled and equalized and compressed using one program, which is a miracle worker. It's fantastic. It's called Auphonic. After that, we tag the MP3 file and add some show art, which is like a picture. And then it gets published to a media host, which is called Libsyn. Again, there's a link in the show notes if you're interested. And that's $15 per month, including download statistics. Then, of course, most of you know it appears on our webpage, inglespodcast.com. And we also pay for that, which is €110 per year. That's the hosting cost for the website. When the episode is published, it gets shared on social media, mainly on Facebook, facebook.com/mentioningles, and also on Twitter at mentiontwit. And we also use images from Creative Commons, make sure that we credit the images in the show notes. And there's a link to that webpage also in the show notes for this episode. And of course, we have transcriptions for our Patreon supporters. So they are transcribed, the audio is transcribed into words, and we apologize for the backup, the delay in publishing recent transcriptions, but we are working on that now. So we'll be sending you lots of transcriptions in the following weeks. And there's a monthly newsletter that we also send out to people who subscribe on the webpage. If you're interested, Dominic, or anybody in podcasting for fun, there are 2 recommended places where you can podcast for free. One is Anchor and the other is Podbean. Links in the show notes. And if you have any questions or if you're curious about more information, please send us an email. Our contact emails will be at the end of the episode.
So, let's get back to our main topic today. We've got a voice message from Tony, who's originally from Mexico, but now he lives in Phoenix, Arizona. And his CB handle, his Citizens Band radio handle, is El Pipiri Pao.
Bippity bow, here we go.
Hey, Reza and Craig. My name is Tony Sandoval. I'm from Mexico, but I live in Phoenix, Arizona. Hey, I have a question for you, Reza. I noticed that you, on the vocabulary, how come you pronounce it vocabulary? And then temporary, you say temporary. And then what else? I had another one. Particularly, you say particularly. So, you guys speak different, and you and Craig speak different. And sometimes you change the words. And I'm wondering if either one of these words is correct, because I'm getting some kind of confused. I don't know if you can help me with this. Hey, I've been listening to your podcasts, and they're great, man. I've been learning a lot. Seriously, you guys are good and funny, and what else? Well, I like everything. Just keep doing the good work. I don't know if you can edit this. I'm sorry, I'm nervous. I've never been nervous in my life. But this is my first time I record something, and I'm afraid you're not going to understand me. Okay, guys, I guess I'll keep listening to you guys until I learn everything. Thank you again, and keep it up, man.
Hi, Tony. It's nice to get a chance to hear your voice. Really good. You don't need to be nervous. We understood you perfectly. For the first voice message, that's brilliant.
Yep, absolutely wonderful. Very clear and excellent pronunciation and excellent English. So you're doing everything right, Tony. Well done. Your question about pronunciation, I have a feeling it might be a British-American pronunciation difference. For example, vocabulary. How would you say it, Reza?
Vocabulary.
Vocabulary. And maybe in American English, it's more vocabulary.
Yeah. I think in American English, more effort is made to pronounce that final letter A. So the A-R-Y, vocabulary. There's more effort made to pronounce that letter.
And I also think there's a little more stress, a little more emphasis on that final syllable. And you can hear that more with the next word, temporary, British English, temporary, American English. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. Temporary, I say, and American English.
Temporary. And the final one, particularly, I think it's very similar in American English.
Very similar. But again, maybe there's just a little bit more effort made to say every syllable. Maybe the Americans say particularly, but there's not a big difference in that one.
So really, Tony, it doesn't really matter, or in American English, it doesn't really matter how you say these words. Just you choose, and probably it's better because you're living in the States. It's probably better if you stay with American pronunciation. So vocabulary, temporary, and particularly.
Yeah. You've found a group. I don't know if you realize it, but it's generally words ending in O-R-Y and A-R-Y. So another one could be laboratory, anything, stationary, anything ending in O-R-Y or A-R-Y.
Lavatory.
Tends to be those, doesn't it? Yeah. So that's the kind of group that I think you've realized British and American English is quite different.
One more thing that is also, I think, an Americanism that I noticed in your message, Tony. You said we speak different. And in British English, different is a very strong adjective. So you'd say it's a different language. And when you're describing the verb, the way you speak, you'd use the adverb differently. Now, I blame Steve Jobs for this because years ago, when Steve Jobs was working for Apple, they had an advertising slogan that was "Think Different." And that was how they sold Apple computers and Apple iPhones and products. Well, it should be "Think Differently" if you're a British speaker because it's describing the way you think. But because you're thinking different, you're changing the adverb to the adjective. And I hear that a lot with American speakers. I'm not saying it's not correct. I'm saying it's a difference between the way British people speak and the way American people speak.
So thanks very much for that message, Tony. That was his first ever voice message. And we got another message from Tony. And we're going to play that because that is going to be the main topic of this podcast.
Hello, Reza and Craig. Listen, I was thinking about you guys making a podcast that talks about the trucking business. I think this could give you good material for 2 episodes. Why? Because there are 2 types of business: the long-haul deliveries and the city deliveries. You must know that I am talking about big rigs, truck and trailer. I believe you guys call them lorries, something like that. In Mexico, we are called traileros, the guys that drive the trucks. They call us traileros in Mexico. In the US, they call us truck drivers. And in Cuba, they call us rastreros. Well, guys, I hope you can do this soon. I am from Mexico, living here in Phoenix, Arizona, in the US. And my CV handle is El Pipiripao. They call me El Pipiripao. Come on. I'll be listening to you guys. Hoping to hear about this theme someday. Good luck and huge afirmativo. Saludo. Salute to you guys. Bye-bye.
So let's look at some vocabulary connected to truck driving and long distance lorry driving. And as Tony said, in the UK, lorry is camion, and in the US, truck. So a truck driver, a lorry driver. Are there any differences between the distance they travel?
Yes, as Tony mentioned in his message, there are long haul deliveries. Haul is Haul. So if something's a long haul, it's a long journey. Or you've got short haul or short routes. So I imagine that Tony nearly always does long haul. That's why he's got time to listen to our podcast.
Driving long distances, exactly. And I'm guessing that Tony drives a big rig. A big rig would be a very long lorry with a powerful engine in the rig. The rig is the front of the lorry where the engine is and where the truck driver sits. And the piece that attaches onto the rig is the trailer. So the truck and the trailer attaches to the rig. In Australian English, they might say truckie, Truckie, as a name for a lorry driver. And we mentioned in a previous episode that the Australians like to add IE to ends of words, like barbecue, Barbie, to make it shorter. So a truck driver, a truckie in Australia.
Yeah, and by the way, in Australia, I don't know if you know, Tony and all our listeners, they have huge trucks in Australia. Quite often in 2 or 3 parts. Really large vehicles which go across Australia.
Yeah, they're like trains. They're huge. So there are different types of long-distance trucks or long-distance lorries. And as I said before, the rig is at the front where the engine is. And at the back, you can attach something called a flat bed. Bed like cama, and flat llano. And on this flatbed, you could put things like lumber, Lumber, which is wood, or maybe barrels of things. It's an open trailer, so it's not closed. So really, you could put anything on the back of a flatbed.
Another very important type of lorry or truck is a tanker. we say in the UK, but I think in North America you tend to say tank truck or fuel truck. So tanker, tank truck, fuel truck. Obviously, it's a truck full of fuel, oil or gas, as you would say in North America, gasoline. So you need to obviously drive extremely carefully if you're driving one of those, because there's a potential for a great disaster if they have an accident.
There's another kind of truck, and the back of the truck goes up on pistons. You can lift it up and tip or echar what is inside outside. So you often see these where there's roadworks or maybe a mine where they're taking earth or something from the ground, and they put the earth into a dump truck or a dumper truck or maybe a tipper truck because it tips up on pistons.
Another type of lorry or truck is a platform, similar to a flatbed, but it moves. If you can imagine like a flatbed, but the flat bit moves up and down. It's a platform which goes up and down. So a platform truck or lorry.
Sometimes you need to transport ice cream, meat, fish, maybe dairy products like milk or yogurt. And these items are perishable goods. Perishable, which means they can go off or go bad, estropearse. So when you transport these kind of things, you transport them in a refrigerated lorry or a refrigerator like you have in your kitchen, but it's a lorry or truck that is called a refrigerated lorry.
Another type is a tractor unit. Not a farming tractor, not just a tractor unit is a type of truck, and it's a type that has a heavy duty, that means really powerful, has a heavy duty towing engine. To tow, T-O-W, is when one vehicle is attached to another to move it along, because maybe the second one has no engine or the engine is broken. So a tractor unit is used for that.
Now, Reza is very good with words. He's very good at expressing himself. He's very good at describing things. And I could say that Reza is very articulate.
Oh, you're too kind.
The way he puts words together. And that word articulate can be used to describe a lorry. An articulated lorry. Articulated lorry. It has two or more parts, and the parts are joined together with a gap between them. And these kinds of articulated lorries are similar to what Reza mentioned earlier in Australia, where you can add many different lorries together. So it's very, very long. And there's a join in the middle.
Or any kind of standard trailer truck. Basically, if the cabin is separate from what you're towing, then it's articulated. If there's a space in the middle. So I imagine that Tony drives an articulated lorry. Some are bigger, some have 3 parts rather than 2, but anything which has a space in the middle is articulated. So there's another type called a box truck. That's not articulated because there's no space in the middle. So the bit where the driver is, the cabin or the driver's area, is attached to where he brings his load. La carga. There's no space in the middle. So it's kind of the shape of a box. So a box truck is not articulated.
It's fixed together, it's joined. It doesn't move. And articulated lorries, there can be a danger of accidents if the back trailer pulls around at 90 degrees and completely blocks the highway or the motorway. And the name for that in English is to jackknife. Jackknife, to jackknife. And a jackknife is like a penknife, una navaja. So if you imagine you open a penknife, well, the lorry looks like that. So the cab, the rig, is facing forward, but the trailer part is at 90 degrees and completely blocking the motorway. That's very, very dangerous and can cause serious accidents.
Now, who can drive a lorry? Well, you need a license, obviously. And we're not experts in the USA, but in the UK, in the United Kingdom, you need an HGV. That's a heavy goods vehicle, an HGV license. And there are many different classes. A very important word for long distance lorry drivers is the cabin. The cabin is the bit at the front where the driver has the steering wheel, el volante, and drives, but also where he or she might sleep at night. I said he or she. Yeah, I remember to say he or she because not many female lorry drivers, but there are more and more all the time. So where he or she can actually sleep. So sometimes it's just one big space with the steering wheel and then a big space behind. Or sometimes it's like a little kind of a very thin wall separating them with a little door, maybe to get through from the driving area back to the sleeping area.
Or a curtain.
Or a curtain, maybe, yeah. So if you're lucky you've got an area where you can sleep, then you've got a cabin.
I've actually slept in a cabin and crossed a border illegally.
Really?
Although I hope I don't get arrested if I tell you this story.
What, were you a stowaway?
I was a stowaway.
Oh, you better tell the story. What's a stowaway?
I was 21 years old, and myself and my good friend wanted to travel through Europe and hitchhike down to the south of France. The hitchhike is hacer autostop. So we knew this long-distance lorry driver in the UK who was traveling to Italy via France in his lorry, and he offered to take us across the border on the ferry. We needed to sleep in the cabin area behind the curtain, and we got on the ferry to cross from the UK to France, and they didn't check our passports. We just slept in the cabin until we got to France, and then he dropped us off, which means he left us in Paris, and we hitchhiked to the south of France.
Wow.
Yeah, it was quite an adventure. I felt like a criminal. I was a criminal.
You could have got into big trouble for that.
Yeah, but he assured me, he assured us, he promised us that there will be no problems, that he does this trip every week and that we could sleep. I'm not sure if it's the same now, but in those days, back in the 80s, you could do that quite safely and we had no problems.
Well, I bet these days they check a lot more carefully. I bet they do.
So we've got one or two details concerning driving in Europe that American truckers might be interested in. Now, these are regulations that were issued in 2007. And one regulation is that the non-stop driving time cannot be more than 4.5 hours. Notice I said 4.5 hours and not 4 hours and a half, which is a common mistake sometimes with Spanish speakers. 4.5 hours, the maximum time you can drive in the EU without stopping.
So after 4.5 hours, the driver must, by law, take a break period of at least 45 minutes. However, this break can be split into 2 breaks. So the first would be 15 minutes, and then the second at least 30 minutes a bit later. So one 45-minute period, or first 15 minutes and then 30 minutes minimum.
In the EU, Tony, this might be interesting for you, a daily driving time shall not be more than 9 hours. So you cannot drive more than 9 hours in a 24-hour period, which is a long day, isn't it? Driving for 9 hours. I mean, sometimes I drive for 5 or 6 hours and I'm really, really tired.
Yeah.
So 9 hours in one day, that's a lot.
I mean, my legs get tired, my feet get tired with the pedals in an ordinary car. So I can't imagine the fatigue of operating the pedals of a really big truck.
In the EU, in the European Union, the weekly driving time is not more than 56 hours, must not be more than 56 hours, which also is a very long week. I don't work as many hours as 56, do you?
No, not many people do. And Craig, how do truckers get paid in the European Union?
They get paid by the mile or kilometre if you're outside of the UK, or you could get paid by the load. Load, as Reza said earlier, carga, the load, so how much you're taking in your truck, or by the hour. So some companies will pay the driver by the hour.
I'd be interested to hear from Tony how he prefers or would prefer to be paid, by the mile, by the load, or the hour. Let's hear what you think, Tony.
Yeah, how do you get paid, Tony? We're not going to ask you how much you get paid, but we will tell you that the salary in the UK for a long-distance lorry driver is, on average, £2,060 a month. That's before tax. So gross, we'd say, GROSS, netto. That's about €2,385 for driving in the UK. Any idea in other countries in Europe, Reza, what they're being paid at the moment?
Well, funny you should say that, Craig. I was surprised to find out that in other similar countries, they actually get paid less. Mm-hmm. For example, in the Netherlands, in Holland, it's about £1,500 or €1,740 per month. And in Germany, where generally salaries are higher than the UK, in fact, lorry drivers only get £1,650, which is about €1,900. So actually, your average British truck or lorry driver gets paid more than in Germany or Holland.
But I don't think they are particularly high salaries when you consider how many hours they're driving per week. It's a very demanding job. A demanding job is exigente. It's a difficult job to do. It demands a lot from the worker, from the driver.
Yeah. And the average is 48 hours, but it can be extended up to about 60. However, there are many advantages of being a lorry driver. Shall we look at the pros and cons?
Well, yes, we've already mentioned the long hours, which can be a disadvantage. Also, the discomfort, because I know that the rigs and the cabins are quite comfortable in modern trucks and lorries, but you're sleeping in a truck, or sometimes you're sleeping in a cheap, bad motel or hotel if you have to pay for your own accommodation. So maybe the conditions can be quite difficult and uncomfortable.
I imagine for many truck drivers, perhaps the worst con, the disadvantage, is the many hours or even days away from home and family. That would be very difficult for some people, I imagine. Also, it would be really hard to meet with friends and relatives. How can you? You could be on the other side of the country, and places like America or Canada, they're very big countries, so you can't easily meet people.
And looking at the hours that you're driving, up to 56 or maybe more hours per week, you're sitting a lot in the cab. So there isn't much time for exercise, which could cause backaches and other health problems.
And it can be, I imagine, monotonous at times. Monotonous, always doing the same thing, driving, changing up and down the gears, steering, always the same thing. A little bit monotonous, which I suppose could get boring at times.
And I know Tony has us in his ears, and obviously he's listening to other podcasters and speaking on the CB radio to other truckers, but it could, I'm guessing it could be a bit lonely unless you really enjoy your own company. As beautiful as it might be on the open road, you might get a bit lonely sometimes being by yourself and not seeing other workmates.
I imagine, yeah. But Tony, I know there are plenty of advantages as well. I hope we're not depressing you. We want to cheer you up a bit, or any other trucker who's listening to us. As we said, in the UK, I'm not sure about the USA, it's fairly good entry-level pay. In other words, even when you just start, the pay's not bad. I mean, you're not going to become a millionaire, true, but for starting pay, it's not bad. And there's also plenty of potential for overtime pay. Overtime is when you get paid extra money because you work extra hours, and often overtime pay is at a higher rate than normal pay. Lorry drivers have a lot of opportunity for that.
Like working weekends and holidays, yeah. Also, apart from the HGV, the heavy goods vehicle license, obviously passing the test and getting your license, there's little training you need to start. So once you have your license, then that's the training. You just drive.
I imagine you get much, much better as time goes on, like any job, but the license is the main thing to start.
Yeah.
One thing I would love, I guess, about being a trucker myself would be the independence. They do have a lot of independence.
They can stop when they want to. Yeah.
Yeah, you've got the freedom of the open road. The road is yours, and it's waiting for you to just drive on up there.
It's quite romantic, the idea of just driving in the States or in Australia, in a huge country with not much traffic from city to city. That must be an incredible feeling, just to be free on the road and enjoying the scenery and dressing as you want. You can wear jeans, a t-shirt. You do not have to go to work in a suit and tie, which is a huge advantage.
Craig, I can think of one final amazing advantage of being
There's more?
a trucker. Yeah,
There's more.
there's more.
Tell us.
Maybe the best of all. The time you get to listen to podcasts. All that time, you can't watch a film, a video. That would be illegal. You're not allowed to watch films when you're driving, but you can perfectly legally and with no problem listen to audio podcasts.
I think that's an excellent advantage. Before we go, Reza, I've got a surprise for you. I'm going to test you on trucking lingo. Now, you haven't seen these words because they're not on the notes in Google Docs. So I'm going to say some words in trucking lingo. Tell me what you think they mean. What's a bear? B-E-A-R. Un oso. What's a bear?
Honestly, we haven't prepared this. I'm guessing a bear. I've heard it. I've heard it. I've seen it on TV. You know, truckers saying this, but I can't remember what it means. A bear.
Be careful. There's a bear behind you.
A bear. Is it a police car?
Yes. Well done. Fantastic.
A patrol car, a police car. Yeah.
Or as we might say in slang, a cop in the States, or a copper, C-O-P-P-E-R, a policeman or policewoman. So if a bear is police, what's a bear in the air?
Police helicopter?
Yep. Well done. What's a granny lane, Reza? A granny lane. G-R-A-N-N-Y-L-A-N-E.
Well, the lane is a division of the motorway or the highway, the freeway. Like you can have bus lanes only for buses, cycle lanes. So I'm guessing that a granny lane, grannies you expect to move slowly. I'm expecting it a lane where the traffic's really slow.
Exactly. Very well done. So 100% so far. By the way, if you want more vocabulary, truckers and Tony and anybody listening, go to Cars and Driving episode 101. So that's inglespodcast.com/101. On that episode, we spoke about traffic and driving and highways and motorways, etc. Let's go to CB calls, Reza. You might know the first one. I think it's very common on the TV. 10-4?
10-4 is like okay or no problem or I heard that.
Yep. Copy that. Copy that. Okay. 10:33 is not so common. I think I might have got you there. 10:33.
Is there any relevance to the number 33? Would it make me think
No.
of anything? I have no idea. I can't guess.
I'm sure Tony knows that's an emergency. If there's an emergency, it's 10:33. And a very, very important one, 10-100. What's a 10-100?
Oh, I've heard
That you will definitely need if you're driving long distance.
I've heard that. Now, what does that mean? Ooh, 10-100, 10-100. Well, you're definitely going to need it. Is it to have a pee?
Yes.
Ah. Finally. The relief. I finally got it. To have a pee.
It's a restroom stop or a bathroom stop is a 10-100. You were very good with the police one, so let's have another police one. What's a plain white wrapper?
A plain white wrapper.
A wrapper is what you'd put around a chocolate bar, for example.
That kind of wrapper. With W.
With a W.
Not a singer.
No, not a singer. No. Not 50 Cent. Or
W-R-A-P-P-E-E-R. What goes around the street? It's a plain white wrapper. I don't know.
It's an unmarked police car. So a police car that doesn't have the police markings.
Just white, no markings. Right, I get it.
a plain white wrapper. And the final one, before we say goodbye today and go out the door, catch ya on the flip-flop. If I said to you, Reza, hey, I'll catch ya on the flip-flop, what does that mean?
I guess it means I'll see you when I come back in the other direction after I've left off my load or collected my load.
Exactly. It means I'll see you on the return trip. And now it's your turn to practice your English. Are you a trucker or a lorry driver? Would you like to be one? And if you are a trucker, do you listen to other podcasts while you're doing your long haul journeys to improve your English? We would like to hear from you. We would like to know, Reza, how can people send their voice messages?
Yeah, you can send your voice message to us at speakpipe.com. speakpipe.com/English podcast.
That's right. And if you prefer an email, you can reach me, Craig, at inglespodcast.com or Reza at belfastreza@gmail.com. And if you're interested in downloading some paid listening courses, you can go to Mansion Inglés and look at our online store. That's at store.mansioningles.net.
As ever, we'd like to thank all our Patreon sponsors. Those are the people who voluntarily donate $1 a month.
Or more.
Or more if they want. Yeah.
We don't mind.
Go ahead, yeah. And you get instant access to the transcription, so the audio words written down of the podcast. If you're interested in that, have a look at Patreon. That's Patreon, patreon.com/English podcast. We'd like to thank all of them by name, but we haven't got time. So maybe, Craig, we can just thank our newest sponsors who've joined up.
Yes, absolutely. Just joining us this month, and thank you very, very much. Julian Gomez, thank you. Carlos, Luigi Ranzato, Lydia Alonso, thank you too. Ricardo Corrales, Oscar, Fabiola Clavero, Esther Martinez, Juanlu Anaya, and Marga Ariza. Thank you very much to all of you and to the other Patreon supporters whose names are on the website. And we've solved a mystery, Reza. Do you remember our Patreon supporter, Maria Luz Lopez Comfort 1.4?
Yes.
She sent us an email to explain.
Yes, we just knew her as, I think it was Comfort 0.4 or 1.4, yeah?
Yes, or I think she wrote her name. I think it was Maria Luz Lopez and then Comfort 1.4. So the mystery has been solved. Here's Maria Luz's email. She says, my name is Luz Lopez, or Luz. I'm the new Patreon that filled in their second surname, Comfort 1.4, by mistake. Some days before, I was filling in a form, rellenado, with my car data, and I wrote the model of the car, Comfort 0.4, and these words were recorded in my computer. Then, while I was signing up for becoming a Patreon, these words appeared automatically, but I didn't realize this fact, and I sent the information with the error. And this is the story of the strange name. Thank you very much, Luz, for clarifying that doubt.
Oh, I get it now.
What's next week, Reza?
On next week's episode, we've got renewable energy.
That sounds very good. Thank you for listening this week. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you with us. And thanks for your question, Tony. Until next week, it's goodbye from Reza.
And Craig says, keep her rolling.
10-4, buddy. The music in this podcast was by Pitts. The track is called See You Later.